Hey, 7th graders, hope all of you guys are doing well. We are going to continue our study in ecology with section 19C. Today we're going to talk about biotic rhythms and what exactly biotic rhythms are, as well as we're going to go into different relationships between animals in an ecosystem. Let's first start by defining what rhythms in the ecosystem are. Rhythms are a change that happens on a regular basis within an ecosystem. Some are going to be daily changes, whereas others will be seasonal. We see in Genesis 8:22 that there are two rhythms established by God. Genesis 8:22 says, "While the earth remaineth, seedtime and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease." So our two rhythms that are established by God in Genesis 8:22 would be seasons as well as night and day. So our daily and our seasonal changes were established by God. Some of our rhythms that we're going to be talking about, the first one is going to be circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is daily changes that take place during one 24-hour period. There are examples of this, like nocturnal species that sleep at night while the other ones are awake. If they are not nocturnal, they're called diurnal, which are going to be the ones that are awake during the day and are asleep at night. When it comes to circadian rhythm, we have what is called biological clocks. Those are triggers that change with or without daily light changes. Then we have seasonal changes, or annual rhythms. An annual rhythm is a change in an ecosystem that occurs with the change of season. So as seasons change, that's when these annual rhythms occur as well. There are going to be seasonal changes in our plant population. This is probably going to be most common and most easy for us to see in our environment. Trees and shrubs are actually alive all year round. They do look dead and old in the wintertime because they don't have any leaves. What is happening is that during the spring, summer, and early fall, they're able to carry on photosynthesis and grow. When it comes to late fall, they start losing their leaves, and it's going to have days that are shorter and colder, and they enter a state of dormancy. During the state of dormancy, their growth and metabolism are going to slow down, and essentially the organism is inactive during this time period. The same thing can happen in some animals as well, except for we don't call them dormancy, we call them hibernation. So like the bears that go into hibernation during the wintertime to save a little bit of energy because they can't find food. Migration usually happens in birds and some butterflies. They'll go south where it's a little bit warmer and then come back when it gets warm up here. Then we have ants that actually build and store food during the summertime for the wintertime. And we do see this mentioned in the Bible as well. I have posted several videos for you guys to watch this week. Make sure you guys are watching your videos from the Amoeba Sisters. They will go into a little bit more detail and have some cute cartoons that go along with what we'll be talking about in our videos. All right, we're going to talk about the relationship between organisms now. We're going to start off with in the same species. Okay, we're going to move on to our first category of organisms interacting with organisms of the same species. The first one is going to be independent organisms, or what we call solitary organisms. One member of the species is going to exist and live without the help of members of the same species. The only time they rely on a member of the same species would be for reproduction. Examples would be like oak trees, spiders, bears will probably be our best example that we're most common with. They hunt and eat and live alone, as well as bears will mark their territories to make sure an intruder doesn't come around them. Then we have couple relationships within animals of the same species. Animals that choose a mating partner and that they rarely separate would be in this couple relationships. We also call this mating for life. Examples would be like bald eagles, penguins, owls, parrots, seabirds, and swans. Most of these will actually choose a new partner if their mates die, but there are some species of birds that will end up mourning themselves to death or just keeping in search for their partner until they actually die themselves because they won't eat or take care of themselves. There's also some species of fish like angelfish that participate in these couple relationships. Then we have animal societies, and these are going to be our most common ones, like our school of fish, flock of birds, pride of lions, herd of elephants, the animals that live together. They're actually going to form when a number of animals of the same species live together. These are important because it's going to provide a means of defense for which is going to help increase the survival rates because the other animals are able to protect each other and keep out predators. Then we have social insects like ants, termites, wasps, and bees. These are going to be the animals that have individual jobs. They live in colonies, but there's going to be like worker bees or worker ants. You're going to have the ones that work inside the colony, as well as the queen bee or ants that we've talked about before. Then we have competition within populations. Competition is a struggle between organisms for some essential factor that is in short supply. So if you have a group of organisms living in one area, they're going to use very, very similar food supplies. And if that comes in short demand, that's when the organisms are going to kind of fight over it. Chickens are going to have what's called a pecking order, and it's going to be groups that's going to be like ranks among the organisms, and the highest rank will be able to get the food first and then trickle down to the other ones. Or in wolf packs, we have like the alpha male, which is the dominance, and the alpha male will be the one that gets the food first, and then it trickles down that way. And in the case of plants competition, if a essential factor is in short supply, some plants will use it all up and others will die. Now we're going to move on to relationships between organisms of different species. So we talked about organisms in the same species, same population. Now we're transitioning to how organisms act with each other in the ecosystem. First of all, we have competition again, but these are between populations. This occurs when two or more different populations share the same niche. Examples would be like robins, blue jays, mockingbirds within a single area may compete food. If that food supply is going to be in small demand, competition will be stronger. So the less food supply you have, the more competition will be in an area. Next, we have the predator-prey relationship or predation. Predator is an animal that feeds on another animal. The animal that they feed on is what we call prey. Usually the predator is going to kill its prey. These relationships are actually going to help populations stay balanced within an ecosystem. So in the case of spiders and mosquitoes, if you kill off all the spiders in an area, you'll probably have a huge amount of mosquitoes because the mosquitoes are kept in check or kept balanced by the spiders eating those mosquitoes. Then we have what is called mutualism, which is two individuals or two populations that live in the same area but they do not impact each other. When it comes to our relationships between animals, symbiosis is going to be one thing you guys hear a lot about, and that is a close long-term relationship between two species. Some may benefit one or both the species. Sometimes it may harm one of the species. We have three types, which is commensalism, mutualism, and parasitism. Let's start with talking about commensalism first. Commensalism is a relationship between two populations that benefits one species but does not help or hurt the other species. Examples of these would be like orchids and jungle trees. Orchids are part of a plant group called epiphytes, and those are plants that grow on tree branches, but they don't take the nourishment from the trees. So then how is one benefit and the one not? The jungle tree is going to grow, but the orchid is actually going to obtain needed minerals from the dust it collects from the ridges of the tree bark. So the orchid is going to be benefited because it gets its minerals from the dust from the tree bark, but the tree is going to have no harm, or the orchid does not help the tree as well. Then we have mutualism, which is a relationship between two populations where both are benefited. So think about the honeybee getting nectar from different flowers. The bee is pollinating the flower, so the flower can reproduce and have more flowers, and the bumblebee is getting the nectar that it needs to survive and make food as well. Then we have parasitism, or parasites, which are going to obtain energy and materials from their host, so they are going to be benefited. The parasites like ticks, lice, tapeworms, they're going to be benefited. But their host, so the person or the animal the parasite is on, is going to lack nutrients because the parasite is going to gain them. With an ecosystem, we have to talk about succession. First, let's define what a climax community is. A climax community is where all the organisms live in it and don't change very much. It's like the top, it's the peak of that ecological group. But we have what's called ecological succession, which is the process of a disturbed ecosystem returning back to that climax community. We have two types of ecological succession. We have primary and secondary. In primary succession, ecological succession is going to begin in an area that has no soil. So primary succession begins where there's no soil. Inside of a primary succession, it's actually going to be fairly rare for the area. What happens in primary succession is a pioneer species. The pioneer species are going to be the first ones in an ecosystem, and they are very small and hardy organisms that can live on rock. They're actually going to break down the rock slowly into smaller bits and form organic matter as well. Then we have secondary succession, which is succession that begins in an area that already has soil. It usually occurs when a fire has burned through an area or when an area has been cleared of all the other species. The pioneer species are going to replace by a climax community. The time it takes to complete succession is going to vary depending on what the environment is and what species come in that area. Alright, that is all for today and chapter 19. I did post a couple videos. There's one on ecological succession for you guys to watch, as well as relationships between organisms. Make sure you guys watch both of those. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. Make sure you guys are completing all of your work on teams as well. Have a great day, guys.